Okay, Chair Hall, we are live.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. It is Wednesday, October 26, 2022. This is the regular meeting of the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners being streamed live on YouTube from our conference room in the courthouse in Newport. All three commissioners are present today, and that constitutes a quorum. We move now to the adoption of the consent calendar. Usual disclaimer that these are items we've discussed at previous meetings or routine matters. Is there anything that staff or commissioners would like to highlight or remove for separate consideration?
I'll move for approval of the consent calendar as presented.
Oh, good. I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Would all in favor please say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's approved. And we move now to our decision and action item. And this is an order with, this is related to a presentation we had last week. Sole source procurement of precast concrete arch for the Cougar Creek project. Mr. Kenyon, Mr. Gardner, if you'd come forward, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Roy Kenyon, Public Works Director.
Brian Gardner, Assistant County Counsel for Lincoln County.
So we had the presentation last week, and since that meeting, Mr. Gardner has drawn up a document, essentially of findings, explaining why we believe this should be a sole source rather than a competitive bid project. Anything you'd like to highlight about this? Is there any new information since last week's meeting?
No, but I think it's important for people to understand that this is actually just a procurement of the culvert itself,
Mhm.
that the actual installation will be a competitive bid situation. So this is only basically to get a head start on the construction of this culvert, because it'll take some time for it to be produced. And we don't want it to be a delay. Once we get a contractor on board, we want to have everything necessary to go forward with the project.
Okay. Questions from my fellow commissioners?
No further questions from me.
Well, I just would clarify, or I think we have a limited window when we can work in the, I don't know, river, stream, water. Is
Yeah,
that
the
correct?
water work period for that stretch of stream is July 1st to September 15th.
Which again adds some urgency to get started now.
Yes.
And just to let the board know that
Mhm.
this is Brian Gardner. So this isn't the contract, obviously,
Mhm.
with contact. That will come before you, so you'll be able to see that and have any questions with regards to whether or not, because one of the
Right.
requirements is that it's negotiated. So that contract will come
Mhm.
before you, and of course, the installation contract will come before you as well.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
Yeah, I can slop my way through that. So let's see, do we have a? There we go. I'll make a motion accepting the findings regarding a sole source determination for selection of contact for procurement and delivery of precast concrete culvert.
Say that 3 times fast.
No, thanks.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, gentlemen. It is unanimously approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Now we move to a couple of discussion and information items. I'd like to invite our Park Supervisor, Kelly Perry, to come forward for this item. This is regarding development of Brown Memorial Campground. So,
Morning. How's it going? I'm Kelly Perry, Parks.
Morning.
We have a contract that I would like to move forward with 2 Ink Studios from Portland, and they have a plan to make our master plan for Brown Park. And that includes everything above and below ground with this 83-acre parcel that we have out on the Siletz. Does anyone have any questions about it? Did you guys all get it?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And this, my if memory serves me correct, this is a ARPA project that we funded, that we approved for funding a while ago, correct? Yeah.
And so we've seen the document, but in case somebody's watching online, could you go into just a little more detail about what the scope of this work will be?
Yeah, so this is a landscape architecture firm in Portland, and they will design the campground. We'll have up to 50 tent sites and RV sites on this acreage. They'll develop the ADA access trail, maybe a nature playground, definitely bathrooms, possibly overnight cabins. And so they'll be looking at the land and topography and figuring out where we can place all these things and hopefully make it a wonderful design.
And also all the infrastructure that has to go underneath all
True,
of
the
that
stuff-
stuff.
the exciting
Yeah.
stuff we don't often talk about,
Yeah.
which is the expensive
Yeah.
stuff. but
Yay, the
obviously
plumbing, yeah.
septic and electrical.
And, I was on the commission when Walter Brown made this fabulous donation to the county. And I remember him communicating to us at the time where he was certainly in favor of and hoping that we would move forward with some development, camping sites, and other recreational opportunities as well, that he also was really strongly urging, I believe, that we keep it, keep the overall look and feel of the park as natural as possible. And will that be taken
is-
into account in
Yeah,
this?
that's definitely our goals. There's a nice write-up that Barbara Brown, that he wrote for his late wife.
Mhm.
And her vision for this place was really to have it as a natural nature area where people could go and enjoy the natural lands. And so with that is what's going to be moving us forward in these plans.
Excellent. Further questions or comments?
This proposal is, first of all, the site right now is relatively, what would I say, undeveloped. It would be the state of the land as it was prior to any development. And this proposal is not only to design, but also to develop the park. So it's not a situation where we'll be getting a plan and then we have to go out and get money to develop it.
Some of the things we will have to go get money for. Things are expensive. So right now, we currently only have money for the septic and the bathroom facility if that grant that I wrote a month ago or so goes through. And we'll find that out in April. But pavilions, paved trails, all of that stuff costs money. And currently we don't have money for that secured.
But at least it gets us to the point with additional funding, we'll be able to add those enhancements to the park.
And part of this plan is they will do the cost estimating of all of that stuff.
That's important. Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Are we ready for a motion?
Well, actually, this is on discussion and
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
information.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Yeah. Well, do we have a consensus to bring this back next week, either as a consent or decision item? And what would be the preference of the board on that?
Can I just, is that
Oh.
going to interfere with any timelines that you have?
It's fine. We'll put, right now, the timeline on this, because I wasn't aware of the proper procedures going through, is saying they're ready, they're rearing to go and ready to start. So whenever we sign, so next
Wonderful.
week would be fine.
Okay,
I'm fine with it on consent calendar if everyone agrees.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that as well.
I think that's
Okay,
appropriate.
Thank you.
you can let
Thank
them
you.
know we've agreed and we'll make it official in 1 week.
Great.
Thanks, Kelly. All righty, I'd like to invite HHS Director Jane Romero to come forward, please. Talk about the bids received for the remodel of the Nye Street HHS building. Good morning, Jane.
Good
Welcome.
morning. And for the record, my name is Jane Romero and I work as the Health and Human Services Director for the county. So this morning, I'm here just to present the results of the bids that we received for the renovation of the Nye Street building. As I think everybody is aware, we are in hopes of renovating the Ninth Street building in order to house the Newport-based primary care clinic. The existing clinic is,
Excuse me.
has challenges relative to the work that we do there. And we really feel like the Ninth Street building is just going to be a much better option, not only for our staff, but more importantly for our community. So towards that end, we worked with RSS Architecture to develop a floor plan to make sure that we had 9 exam rooms and offices to support the clinic. And further, RS Architecture worked with us to handle a bid process. And so 5 construction companies demonstrated an interest. 3 of them actually submitted bids. The 3 bids came in from Creative Contracting Incorporated, and that bid is for $466,000. DSL Builders LLC, their bid is $505,000, and Richards Remodeling, and their bid is $649,600. Admittedly, these bids seem high. They are higher than we expected. I believe they're higher than the architect expected. And I think in his letter to us, he made note of that. He also feels that rebidding it might not result in lower bids, and that the bid that we've received is a reflection of our times right now and the availability of contractors to do the work. So maybe I should stop and see if there are questions.
So your specific request to us is to allocate an additional $108,000 of our ARPA funding to pick up part of the cost of this overage.
So my request is actually twofold. One would be to approve the bid request for $466,000 to Creative Contracting Incorporated. And yes, if it is possible to allocate additional ARPA funds, that would be most appreciated. You have already allocated $250,000 to this project, which is very appreciated. We feel that we can find additional funding within HHS up to and including even borrowing it from ourselves from another one of our division's funds. So
Okay.
we're willing to do that. The renovation is just mission critical for us. So.
Indeed, anybody who has been in the 1010 clinic, it's certainly not an ideal space. I know staff has worked very hard to adapt, but when you have 3 people literally sitting elbow to elbow in an office processing claims and other documents, or I remember a video that was shot several years ago, a man volunteered. He's in a motorized scooter, and he was able to get down the halls, but literally with inches to spare. So
It is tight.
yeah, for patients and for staff, it's, I remember again in 2007 when we opened this up, it was before the recession and commercial space was at a premium in Newport. And so that was kind of the best choice though at the time, though not an ideal choice.
Well, and if I may add too, the tightness of the space is just really not conducive to our times relative to the pandemic.
Very true. County Council Yule, have you had a chance to, or Mr. Gardner to review the proposed contract?
Yes.
Everything in
The bid,
order?
yeah.
Yeah, the bids. Okay, further questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, well, I have a couple of questions. I'm on page 2 of the document she provided us in the packet, and under fiscal and impact paragraph 3. And by the way, thank you, Jane. This was like very thorough. I really appreciate this. So under paragraph 3, under fiscal impact, it says the balance of funding needed or $108,000 will come from primary care division in the form of savings incurred from staff vacancies during the first quarter and from the public health division that will shift ARPA funding and the amount of $59,000 originally approved to support the cost of diversity, equity, inclusion assessment, dipping into other funding streams to replace these funds if approved by the board. So I guess I just want to make sure
Sure.
I understand that. So if the board approves an additional $108,000 to cover half the cost of the overage,
Overrun.
yeah, override, okay, and then internally within HHS, you would come up with the additional 108. And one of the ways you're doing that is to shift funding from the $59,000 we gave you to ARPA funding. So using that ARPA funding already approved to do half of your half. This is getting complicated.
You're doing well.
And then, but that diversity, equity, inclusion assessment would still get done. You just have other resources you could potentially use for that. Is
Yes,
that?
we would tap our public health modernization funding. And as you know, because of the consent calendars you see every month, our funding changes often. We get lots of amendments. And yesterday I talked with Lawrence Portal to ask if we would be able to find alternative funds to cover the balance of that if needed for this funding. So of course you would have to approve that as well.
Okay, yeah, that was my next question back to our county administrator is, looks like we actually need maybe 3 systems of approval here, potential to approve the bid request. And then if we wanted to allocate additional ARPA fundings, we still have unallocated and then I guess,
Allocated.
well, and then change the $59,000 we originally allocated for HHS for this diversity, equity, inclusion assessment would be, I guess, void or whatever, and that would be reallocated to this project.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Whew.
Very good. Wow, very well done.
All right,
Mr. Johnson, could you remind us of how much our current unallocated ARPA fund is?
Roughly, we're at $2.9 million remaining out of the 9.2 plus that we had worked with the commission in June to deploy. And as such, this ability provides this presentation of the staff report provides that opportunity to be able to achieve this end result with minimal impact on that total amount.
Commissioner Hunt, comments or questions?
Just to again clarify, if I did my math correctly, 250,000 in ARPA money was appropriated for this project. The bid came in at 466, which leaves us $216,000 short. And your proposal is to take 108,000 of already appropriated ARPA money for another project and assign it to this project?
The 59,000 that's already appropriated. So we would move it from diversity, equity, and inclusion into this project. And then we would find the balance of our half, as Commissioner Jacobson referenced it, from savings that we have. That would be our priority. Worst case, we would borrow it from ourselves, from our capital fund.
All right, well, I guess I'm concerned about using additional ARPA funds to complete this project. I think as we move forward with our ARPA projects, there are going to be many that are challenged with the cost and actual bids. I think it's a sign of our times. So at this point, I'm not comfortable taking additional ARPA funds to support the project. I think it's a critical project. And I would ask that you and Administrator Johnson work together to find ways to fund it without using additional ARPA funds. I'm also concerned about taking money that's allocated for diversity and inclusion programs, which I think are critically important, and taking money away from those efforts to complete this project. So those are my concerns. And I guess I would look to Administrator Johnson. Is there a way to do you feel there's a way, or are you able to work to try to find a way to complete this project without additional ARPA funds?
Commissioner, thank you very much. There are several options on the table. This was the most
Don't say
resourceful.
straightforward.
Yeah, this was the most resourceful to the point, but we can go back and shuffle the cards again and look at what we can come up with.
Well, again, I'm concerned about setting a precedent when I think we're going to see this, unfortunately, situation frequently in the future.
Yeah, and I mean, I do have a similar concern. I
Mhm.
emailed Jane as well. This is not the only construction project that we had approved an ARPA, and so I'm worried about all of those coming back. And then, the question is I think it's a larger discussion and board policy we need to set, but I too have that worry that a lot of the stuff that made perfect
Mhm.
sense back in June, our reasonable estimate now is unfortunately out of reach or whatever. So I feel like, maybe we need to bring this back for more discussion
Mhm.
next week. That's kind of how I'm feeling. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jane, but I believe that we don't have to respond to the bid till sometime in November. Is
I
that
think it's
correct?
toward the end of the
Toward
month.
the end of November.
Okay.
November,
24th.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. So
Is that
we,
Thanksgiving?
Yes, but it's 45 days.
okay, all right. So we have a little bit
Yeah.
of time. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're getting a consensus here. I share the same concerns that both of you do about utilizing ARPA funds. Absolute critical, necessary, beneficial project. But again, I think we have to keep in mind not only the funds we've already allocated, but remember that these are one-time funds. We've got 2.9 million left, and although we haven't allocated that to any specific projects at this time, I believe we had at least consensus with this remaining money to focus on critical community needs, childcare, affordable housing, and homelessness. So, I think.
Broadband.
Hmm?
Excuse me, I interrupted. Go
That's
ahead.
okay. Yeah.
I said
no, that's-
broadband.
You said broadband. Yes, that's right. That was another issue we prioritized. And so plenty of good causes, plenty of needs. So I'm in favor if we could ask Mr. Johnson and Ms. Romero to further consult on this and bring it back for additional discussion next week.
May I, Madam Chair, could we have a week after next, please? To bring
Okay,
it back, because we need to turn it around relatively quickly. I think it's going to take a little bit more analysis and direction, if you don't mind. So week after next.
So
2 weeks.
Is that all right?
Certainly, thank you.
all right.
Fine with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're up to commissioner reports now. Who would like to go first? Okay, I've got a couple of things. On Friday, I will be joining the Director of Oregon Housing and Community Services and others in Lincoln County for groundbreaking of a new affordable rental housing project called Wacoma Place. This is being developed by the Housing Authority of Lincoln County in partnership with a private developer. Again, it's going to be one building, 36 apartments specifically designed for moderate and lower income people. And, it's just exciting to see it. Of course, we're still so far from catching up on our affordable housing need, but you have 108 units in Newport, Surfview Village, 107 on the 25th Street project, which will be in Lincoln City, which will be getting underway. And, finally, we're getting some momentum on starting to catch up with that need. Also, I want to share and maybe have some internal brief board discussion. I received a notice from OHCS this week that they are again accepting applications for their revolving land acquisition program. And $2,155,000 is specifically allocated for areas outside basically the large valley metro areas, and local governments, housing authorities, nonprofits, federally recognized tribes are the eligible entities. And certainly we have learned with the huge inflation in real estate prices and land values that, it's a concept we've talked about for years, but really have never had the resources to implement to acquire property. Essentially, it's called land banking. And then we could work with, perhaps the housing authority, the Proud Ground Land Trust, other entities to make parcels available to them for further development projects. So I wonder if we could, let's see, the deadline for applications. No, they don't have the deadline. They reopened it earlier this month. And according to the agency website, it would be a pretty speedy process. They've designed it to be a faster moving process than a competitive application process. And it will take approximately 60 to 90 days from application to closing if there are no unusual situations associated with the application. Commissioner Hunt, your thoughts?
Certainly on the surface, it sounds worth discussing. I would look again to Administrator Johnson to look at the proposal. The devil's in the details.
Oh, of
as they
course,
say.
always.
And certainly the idea of trying to obtain sites that have been vetted to be likely locations for affordable housing, I think is a worthwhile effort.
Yeah, so I got the same email and went on and looked at the website and I mean, knock on wood, it seems like a fairly straightforward process. So I think it's something we should definitely look into. There also might be some, leveraging we could do between that resource, if allowed, and some other resources we may have or that are coming in through wildfire recovery or what have you. So there might be a way to kind of stand up some type of, broader effort, taking some other pieces and kind of trying to put them together. So I'm certainly interested. I think, maybe one of the first reach outs is connecting to some of our partners to make sure that they're not going after it. Cause I hate to compete, as a community against the same resource, or if they are going after it, how can we support their application? Or if they're not, then do we need to go after it and they manage the project? So I think those are some of the kind of first conversations that need to happen, but I'm certainly supportive of making sure that somebody in the county goes after this, whether it's us or somebody else, and, making sure we have the lead and the rest of us can push from the back and be supportive. So absolutely.
So, Mr. Johnson, I believe, do you have sufficient board direction to vet this further and report back to us?
I do, and I appreciate that direction. Again, if you, we're kind of on a short time frame on here and would like to call the, as Commissioner Jacobson identified, the stakeholders together. And I think you'll all admit sometimes that's like herding cats. So we'll do the best we can under the circumstances and rely on your help and support to get those people together so we can learn and move on.
Great. Additional commissioner reports.
Yeah, I have a couple things. One is on the topic of homes. I met yesterday with the city of Newport and with the city of Toledo, because we all have different kind of technical assistance or housing plans or available land studies all being done, and kind of realized we should talk about that. And one of the things that came up is, I believe all of us, the city of Toledo, city of Newport, maybe other cities as well as Lincoln County, all have money in a program for that offers home improvement loans to low-income families, with the basis of the program being that you help them stay in their house. The repairs have to be over $10,000. So mostly we're talking roofs. There's other programs for repairs under that, but this one has a tendency to get a lot of, chronic leaks and that kind of stuff. It doesn't actually seem to be working that well. There's very few applications that seem to be going through or being used, but we do know there's a lot of referrals. So people are being sent to the program by other entities, but for whatever reason, not a lot of people seem to be making it through the program. And so we kind of decided yesterday to perhaps have a joint meeting with the group that's doing this program for us, and really talk about, if this is actually meeting the need, if it's not, and if, from there, kind of decide as a board if it's something we want to keep investing in or not, or do it differently, or essentially try to figure out where the barrier is and why people aren't taking advantage of it. Because it certainly is a need. I mean, I think we all could drive around town and find a house that has a bad roof and know that the program is needed. I think it's more about, what's the barrier and getting people to use it. So that's one item on my report. The second thing is Monday is Halloween, I think,
Oh,
as we're
yes.
all aware. And so I was originally doing this by myself, but County Administrator Johnson said he would. I did not twist your arm, but he said he would throw it in with me on this. So for every county employee that dresses up on Halloween, that's allowed to dress up on Halloween with, regulations from uniforms and appropriate dress and all that stuff. If you're able to, I will give $1 to a local charity, and so will Tim. So we got like a $2 per person that dresses up. We haven't decided the charity yet, so we should probably do that. Probably some type of children's charity. If you can't dress up because you're a sheriff's deputy or whatever, maybe you could wear a orange and black ribbon or post with a jack-o'-lantern. I think we'll be liberal in our interpretation of dressing up, just to raise some money for charities. So we will send this out an email to all staff and hopefully raise some money.
Sounds fun. Commissioner Rund, anything to share today?
It does sound fun. Couple of things. First of all, I attended the summit, economic summit last week. It was the first summit that's been held in a couple of years. It was a joint effort of the Economic Alliance and the Greater Newport Chamber of Commerce. And it was well attended. There were about 70 individuals. Administrator Johnson was there. And there were two different panels, one more or less on economic development processes and the other kind of success stories. But I found a lot of value in the opportunity to do networking with the COVID pandemic. Haven't seen a lot of people face to face. There was a good representation, and specifically had the opportunity to meet with Fritz Weber from Senator Wyden's office and talk about funding for the maritime sector, which of course is a project that's very near and dear to my heart. And again, reminded him that there's a big demand on the horizon as many of the individuals employed in the maritime sector are aging and retiring, which kind of rings a bell for me. And that these jobs pay above the state average, and the work that the Maritime Task Force did, Governor's Maritime Task Force did, really identified the opportunity to create job training programs, educational programs, and also specific skill training programs. So I think Fritz was receptive, and also had the opportunity to introduce him to Heather Dessart, who is the executive director of the Northwest Workforce Investment Board, and an important contact in further developing those efforts to provide skilled employees for the maritime sector. So it was a worthwhile effort.
Excellent. Anything else? Then it's time to move to public comment, where any constituent may address us for up to 3 minutes on any topic. And I've been informed we did not receive any written input in the past week. If you are on Zoom and wish to offer public comment, please use the raise hand function. Okay, nothing. And anybody signed in on our sign-in sheet here? Nope, it's quiet across the way. So next week, we'll adjourn until next week on Monday, Halloween at 10 in the morning. Our office meeting and board briefing, Wednesday, the 2nd, also at 10 in the morning. Our regular weekly public business meeting of the commission, both those start